Welcome, everybody, to our first weekly episode of Off the Record, Canada versus UK. What we wanted to do was to try and highlight some of the points and things that go on when businesses work overseas. Our globe has shrunk an awful lot over the last 10 years thanks to the internet, and this has affected a lot of businesses and industries. Both Andrew and I work in the same industry as affiliates. We work together an awful lot, but what we do come across in almost every single time is cultural differences within the industries that we deal in. So we wanted to start off gentle and have a bit of an off-the-record discussion and let people have an inside view of some of the way things happen. And some of the obstacles that we come across doing intercontinental work versus a lot of small business owners in their own community. So what I'm going to do is introduce Andrew Juby to you. He is the CEO and Director of Operations of First Dibs UK over in England, just outside of London. And we've been working together as partners for a little over a year now in similar industries and crossover industries, all within the combat sports type of thing. And this is a niche that's evolved for both of us over the past year since realizing, and meeting each other. And the one thing that never changes is the things that change our lives the most are the people we meet and the books we read. And Andrew and I have read a lot of the same books, and we had a chance to cross paths almost 2 years ago now when we first met, started talking. And it's evolved into a very unique relationship that we believe applies to a lot of people and businesses almost anywhere. So welcome to the show, Andrew. I know this is your first time on Blab and doing live interviews, so we'll break you in easy. What's it like over there today, and what's the big news in your side of the world?
Well, it makes a change to talk to you in daylight this side. One thing that will never change is the time zone. I think the very first time we spoke, you congratulated yourself on keeping me up all night, every night for 6 consecutive days. I suppose the big thing going on over here right now, well, for me, is working with some of the fighters that we've been managing. We've had people drop by the wayside. We've had one guy particularly coming through who's doing really, really well, and I hope to be going up to see somebody this weekend. In fact, what one of the big differences is that you mentioned cultural differences. The other thing that needs to be taken into account is that on this island, as you've often referred to it as, you're never more than 70 miles from the sea. But in spite of that fact, if you were to drive from the tip of Cornwall, which is the bottom left-hand corner as you guys look at it, up to the furthest point in Scotland, John O'Groats, you do it in a day. I know for a fact that you accompanied one of our guys to a fight a few weeks ago, and it was really a trip in the ocean for you, but it was still 14 hours away. If you drove end to end for 14 hours here, you'd be in the sea on both counts. So it's a lot easier to actually go to people and talk to them. You are absolutely mastered the technology your end. You have to. It's just not practical to get in a car or hop on a plane every time to do something. It's a lot more valuable for you over there. But here, I just like getting out and talking to people, because once you're in the same room, it's a lot harder for them to run away.
I think this is one of the things that makes our working relationships work so well together. Is you're kind of the man on the ground over there in Europe, and you're able to put a face to the things that we do digitally on a global scale. A lot of times when people do business overseas, it becomes very impersonal, unpersonal, and you're able to complete that circle of relationship to actually put a face and a voice to things that are happening over in Europe. And I think that's something that a lot of people come across when they're over in North America wanting to reach out to Europe. They're still missing that personal relationship factor in their business, which you obviously bring to the table. both of us having grown up as fans in this industry and sport, did you ever picture yourself in this position?
I pictured myself being in the public eye. I actually made my start into management and multitasking, dealing with the public in the music business back in the late 80s. And a few years ago, after having enough of musicians, no disrespect to musicians, but when you're trying to deal with a band with 5 or 6 guys in it, they all want different things. They almost all want to be the most important one. Everybody's moaning about the singer who's normally the center of attention, but the lead guitarist thinks he's better, blah, blah, blah. It just became too much. And I thought, I miss it. I had a break from it for a while for personal reasons, and I missed the publicity, I missed the limelight, I missed the problem solving. That's the bit I like about it the most. I decided it would be easier to work with fighters than it would be musicians, as mainly they weren't drunk so much, mainly they weren't stoned so much, and it was one person. You only had to get one person in one place for a few minutes every now and then. But what a lot of people don't realise is the huge amount of responsibility that goes with that, because they're people, they're people, and they're getting punched in the face for a few quid or a few dollars, as you'd say over there. It's
Absolutely.
And it's quite a big thing. It's a big thing at me at the moment is sorting out the wheat from the chaff. I've got quite a good reputation over here, not within the fight game. That is fairly recent, my involvement and elevation to where we are now. The most important thing is when you're talking to me, as with yourself, quite often you might hear things that you don't want to hear, because let's face it, not a lot of people like the truth a lot of the time. But you get honesty, you get integrity, and you'll know where you stand. And if you don't like it, there's a big wooden thing on hinges, it's called a door. Open it, go through it, and come back if you realise that you've made the wrong move. But it's all about honesty, integrity, and trying to find it. It's so hard these days to find anybody doing anything that isn't involved about themselves, especially when it comes to money. It's the motivation. Show me the money, and I know you love that. And a bit of Jerry Maguire is one of your favourite films of all time. I realised that for obvious reasons, and I don't want it to be all about the money. They say that when you die, when you're on your deathbed, your life flashes before your eyes, or whatever circumstances. When that happens to me, I want something worth watching, and I'm going to look back and I'll think, I did this, I did that, I made that happen. I didn't just exist, I made it count. And a lot of people are better off for me being here. I like helping people.
You make a difference, and
yeah,
I think that's the biggest thing, I think, that connected us right from the beginning when we overlapped and started to find our synergy together, was that we were both able to make a positive difference and use our skill sets and our abilities and our passion for I hate to say good and evil, but for good, for the good of others, and in an industry that is notorious for chewing people up and spitting them out.
Exactly, and the way you put that, I'm not going to mention any names, but you'll know exactly what I'm talking about more than anyone. When you take the scenario of a very well-known personality that flies 6,000 miles to land in London with no money in his pocket, and to find out that on getting off the plane, his contacts were fraudulent, he's got nowhere to say, nothing to do. He knew nobody in the UK. He was 6,000 miles from home. One message on Facebook, one little text, and within 3 hours, that guy was home and dry because of us.
Absolutely.
I know you know what I'm talking about. Where in the hell can you buy that? You can't.
No, you don't. And in most industry, you don't get that kind of loyalty and support. It's what's in it for me. and I know exactly the event that you're speaking of, and it was a very trying time in a very early stages of our working together. And that was one of the things that solidified what we were able to do intercontinentally that most other people that do what we do were not able to do or able to provide. These is one of the things that sets our working relationship apart, I believe, from anybody else out there. And the fact that we're straight up shooters with people. This industry has changed so much in the last 20 years. I remember, I mean, you're a shade older than I am, and some of our heroes in the sport have overlapped. I mean, who in this sport could not have ever been an Ali fan, right? But you grew up watching him live, more so than I did. I came a little bit later in the Tyson era and the Lennox Lewis and the Larry Holmes, those guys, and in those days, it was who threw the strongest punch and stayed standing, got the next shot. And it's not like that anymore. In those days, it was a very solid team that worked together, and they took the highs, the lows, and they stuck together until they got their opportunity. And that was based on wins, losses, knockouts, and nothing else.
Absolutely.
How is it now?
Well, I suppose in spite of cutting my nose off to spite my face, I've taken a guy in the last 6 months who obviously and a year on from telling him that if he trained for 6 months, I would help him get some good, decent, honest fights in the boxing world. It's happening. He's won his first 5 fights, and his 6th fight in about 6 weeks' time, slightly longer actually, is going to be for a novice title. Now, the promotion that is offering that title, it's an encouragement and it's good. But one thing that's been said to me by somebody who was actually very, very well connected to Muhammad Ali, who you just mentioned, on a phone call a couple of weeks ago, I was quite proud of the fact of our guy's achievement. And he turned around and he said to me, this wouldn't have happened a few years ago. There were no titles at silly levels. You fought 15, 20 fights, and if you were good, then you might get offered a shot. He said, and there was no 3-minute rounds. And he said, those days, we were fighting over 15 rounds. I turned around to our guy yesterday and I said, you've been training, fighting for this now for nearly a year. I said, in fact, although it's been spread out over the months and seems like a massive journey, you have only actually boxed for 28 minutes.
Yeah.
And that shook him. That made him realise just, how little it has to be trained for. You're not in there that long.
Yeah.
And we need to step him up now. We need to make sure he gets the experience of fighting over a longer distance, and that's going to be the next challenge. But everybody's at it, everybody wants it, and at the same time, you've got promoters all over the country, from self-styled wannabes to seasoned fighters that are fed up with being stitched up. They decide to sort their own promotion out as the only way they're going to get it done properly, and at the same time provide a platform for amateurs to fight safely on. It's just crazy. There's just so many people at it. And like I said earlier, trying to sort out the wheat from the chaff is a huge task.
One of the things that obviously I've been following very, very closely, your fighter's progression over there. And one of the things that we've discussed an awful lot, and we're extremely firm and diligent and focused on is and we see it an awful lot with other fighters, is they hurry. They hurry. They pick easy fights. They pick as many fights as they can with guys that they know they're going to beat to try and set that record to get them to the money. And this is something that you have done exactly the opposite with your fighter over there. You've taken the hardest fights that are available, the ones that are going to challenge him and make him grow, so that when he does make that next step and that next level, he's not going to be one of these paper or number fighters. He's gonna be able to be set up to have his lessons learned before they damage his career. These are one of the things that sets us again apart from a lot of people that do what we do, is they're in it for the paycheck, not just for themselves, but for the fighter, yes. But these fighters end up taking fights in that they've got no business taking, and it ends up hurting them down the road. These are things that fighters don't necessarily think of when an opportunity lands on their doorstep. Is it good for them? Is this the right step for them to take me to the next level? We also know we have some other fighters, and they haven't had the counseling and the mentorship and the leadership, or perhaps the team, to keep them from making those mistakes, and for them to come back then and recover from those. In today's age, it's out there. Once it's out there and it's live and it's on video and it's out there for the real world, it's not something anybody's ever going to forget about. So one bad decision can really affect the rest of your career when it comes to your progression as an athlete. And this is something that we take very seriously into account. I know you think of every single time you're talking about your fighter with somebody. It's got to fit both parties, right? It's not just about the money.
No, it's like a contract under common law, which should be just as applicable to you as there's no geography in law. Any contract has to offer each party equal consideration. And for anybody that may not understand that, it simply means that there's got to be something in it for both sides. And it's got to be equal. If you're going to give somebody money for doing something or buying something, what you're giving them has to be worth that amount of money. And the product that they're giving you or that you're receiving has to be fit for purpose. It's the same with fighters. A lot of guys just want to go in there and fight. Our guy, I will mention him, Jake Heisman. You might see this at some point, Jake, so I won't say anything nasty. You only live down the road. But Jake doesn't care about anything except fighting. He's trained for years and years to aspire to this, and he didn't really know which way to go. He wasn't quite sure how to get his first fight. You know how we met, because we both met him at the same time. I've never met at this level such dedicated and wholesome human being. I mean, that guy was back in the gym. He had a fight on Sunday, which he won, of course, otherwise he wouldn't be 5-0, brag. But he was back in the gym early the next morning trying to work out where he went wrong on the fight before. And I said, you didn't do anything wrong. Yeah, there's a couple of bits I'm not too happy with. And he'll go and he'll work on it. And I see him improve. I know what training he does. I know what he does to rectify the faults that he considers he's got from a fight. And sometimes it comes from professionals that have watched him and say, you need to do this, you need to do that. And I know that he goes away and he works on it. And he works at least 5 days a week. If not sometimes 7 days a week, he'll go to the gym. He might not do any heavy stuff, but he'll still do some light bag work. He'll still do shadow boxing. And he puts the time and the effort in. He also reaps the rewards. That's what he's doing. And now we've got to start looking at getting him experienced enough to move up a level and take longer fights. He's only fought 28 minutes in 6 months so far.
I know that there are plans in the works to bring him over to this side of the world and broaden his experience and his horizon at some point in the near future. And we're very much looking forward to showing him off over here in Canada and letting some of these other young up-and-comers know what they're going to be up against very, very soon.
Absolutely. I was actually speaking to Jake last night, and for the first time we started discussing money. I won't go into the personal reasons that brought the conversation about, but I pointed out to him that one of the top guys at his weight at the moment is James DeGale. James DeGale from London. He had a fight in America last year. I forget the name now. I've so many fighters, so many names. I'm getting on a bit. I think outside I might be setting in. I can't remember them all. But James DeGale fought in America last year for round about ballpark figure of $1 million. He won the title, and when he came back to the UK, a defence of that title in the O2 Arena in London is worth £100,000. That 20% of what he can get in America. Now, you said something very relevant to me last night when we were having a conversation, which was if you go to another country and fight a fighter from that country, yeah, the odds are kind of stacked in favour and the scorecard's going to be a little bit biased. I'll probably get moaned at for saying that, but let's face it, it's the truth. We see it time and time again. And as you said to me, what the hell, you still get paid. But Jake won't see it like that. He wants to succeed and he wants to be good. And it's okay, everybody's saying there are no winners and no losers. But, you know...
I don't buy that. I don't buy that.
There are winners.
Nobody gets into that ring to lose. They just don't do it.
Well,
you know, I mean,
there's a few people over here that are stepping into a ring, get their face punched in for £100. I can tell you that now. They'll take the money, they'll go in there, they'll let somebody hit them, they'll go down. They've earned £100 for 30 seconds and laying down on the canvas. And that's the sort of thing which I absolutely abhor. You see, I know that you've been over here and you've experienced some shock horror, bare knuckle boxing, bare knuckle fighting, all legal, all above board, all sanctioned, all licensed, with no problem. And I know it was one of the most eye-opening and best evenings you've ever had. But what you don't really see, what people over there, unless they've been here and experienced it, can't see, because of the American Boxing Commission, because of the Ali law in Canada, you've got the CBC, I think it is. Over here, we've got the BBBA, and then we've got the Amateur Boxing Association, and they all work with people like the WBO and the IBF, etc. But what you guys probably don't know about is what we call semi-pro boxing and white-collar boxing. And often things come up, discussions, topics, feeds come up on social media, actually discussing this and how do you find a professional boxer here when you've got semi-pro? In my eyes, a professional at anything means they're getting paid for it and it's what they do for a full-time job. There's a lot of people that might argue about that, but when you've got guys... That's
pretty much what separates it over here is once you've taken a paycheck for a fight, you're considered a professional.
Yeah, that's true. And here it doesn't work because how do you define a paycheck? I mean, unless you're in one of the big sanctioned bouts that go on in sort of the big arenas in Manchester and London, you could end up fighting in a working man's club with some guy 3 stone heavier than you with about 30 fights behind him and getting your head kicked in for £100. That doesn't make you professional. Some people call it semi-pro. Then we got white collar. White collar is basically anybody that doesn't box can get in and have a go. And we've got head guards and nice big thick gloves the size of marshmallows, and it's all very well, but it's not creating the opportunities for champions. Everybody's got to start somewhere, but everybody just wants a slice of the pie, and they wonder when they get hurt or when they can't win anything, and when they're sitting in the pub all night stuffing their face with pies and 20 pints of beer over the weekend, and then they turn up at the gym on a Monday morning and can't lift their belly off their knees. Talking about myself, obviously, but
You did touch on a couple of very good points there, and one of them is pretty widely understood within the industry, and we discussed it a little bit yesterday with Jake when we had him on camera, and it's something to think about. But I don't think the people that are out there as fans and that watch the sports quite realize the significance between the red and the blue corners, for example, and I mean, people don't understand that. I mean, they understand home and away, like for football and other sports, they understand home and away, and home is always, the favorite team. But in boxing, it's the same way. Red is the home team, basically,
Blue
and
corners.
blue is
Blue corners
brought in to lose.
Always at a disadvantage. I have solved that, actually. And it was purely by accident, because we've got a new corner man on the team. Hi, Josh, if you ever watch this. And he led Jake out and stood in the wrong corner.
I'm sure that impressed a few people.
Do you know what? I don't think anybody noticed, but the funny thing was that particular fight was in head guards. And we were using the head guard that was supplied by the sanctioning body. But the other fighter in the red corner had his own equipment and this nice brand new black head guard with all fancy names over it. Jake had it on his head before we realised that he was in the wrong corner. So I've solved it now. Sort of every single boxing official, MMA and K1, Muay Thai, every single level of combat sports all over the world, I have solved that problem. Single-handedly, I have removed all the stigma attached to the disadvantage of fighting out of the blue corner.
Well, we'll see how that works when
I'll tell you,
guys are heading out for his world title fights.
It's not copyrighted. It's simple. It's so simple. There's no blue corner. There's no red corner. Both fighters fight out of a purple corner.
That's an interesting concept, but I don't think the commissions are going to go for that anytime soon.
Well, if you put red and blue together, what do you get? I mean, to me, it's a no-brainer.
This sounds like somebody who's getting tired of fighting out of the blue corner.
I was hoping you'd pick up on that. Yeah, I know keeping it PG-13, but I'm pissed off with it now. He should be able to go and fight on his own merit, and that's why I'm sort of looking around. And the places where we fought, the promotions that we fought on, have been fantastic, and they've been great, and we'll continue to work with them. But I think after 5 fights and 5 victories, I think after getting in there and putting the pedal to the metal from the minute the bell goes to the minute the bell finishes in every round, and it's not a brawl, he's not brawling. I suppose you could say that he's using hooks instead of jabs. Jabs are supposed to force your opponent open. They're supposed to set up big punches, but he's just throwing massive hooks and over the top punches nearly every single time he comes out of the corner. Why? Because he's being forced to do it. He's constantly been matched. 3 of his 5 fights have been against people that are taller than him, much taller. And really, really frustratingly, and I'm sure you'll elaborate on this in a moment, there's no footage of the other fighters, but there's plenty of footage of the previous fights that Jake's had, and they watch him and they see him, and they're determined that if their fighter's nice and tall, they'll do what any fighter does, and they'll tighten right up, and they won't let him through on the inside. Well, when you do that to a fighter that's smaller than you, in effect, you're doing one of 2 things. You're blocking him out and completely ruining his chance of catching you with a good body shot or a decent barrage of uppercuts. But what you are doing is forcing him to throw bombs over the top. It's the only way you're coming through. And if you're constantly defending your inside, you're going to be leaving the top open a little bit, and those big ones are going to come flying out. So Jake doesn't mess about with jabs at the moment. If someone wants to come flying at him, they're going to get hook after hook after hook after hook. And when he gets fed up with that, they'll get a bowler. The other thing that Jake hates is grabbing. I mean, there was so much holding going on in his fight, a recent fight. I'm not going to elaborate on that because I don't want to be disrespectful, but I thought he'd got into the ring and met his long-lost cousin. You know,
it was holding is something that fighters do when they don't know what else to do.
Exactly. Exactly.
And I know the fella that he fought in his last fight. There's a little bit of knowledge going back there. They've sparred together. A little bit, so they were fairly familiar with each other. And the other fighter comes out of a gym with a massive pedigree.
Yeah.
And I know you guys took it as to put fire in your bellies when things were leading up to this fight. From my side of the world and looking at it from a little more neutral business perspective, I took that as the most epic compliment you and your fighter could ever have had, when the battle cry in a gym like that with a pedigree like that is everybody is trying to figure out a way how to solve your fighter. When the entire gym with a pedigree like that, it has that kind of focus on one thing and they lose, dude.
Yeah. Well, I think the secret is that Jake has simply been training for years before he started fighting. He's so modest. He's such a nice guy. He really is. He's actually a bit of a nutter, but he hides it very well.
Almost any sane people, think the same way. Somebody that gets into a ring to get the shit beat out of him. I mean, we got to be a nutter, right? But yet that's what these guys do. That's their job.
Well,
that's what they live for. It's their passion. And actually on that note, not to be rude and not let you finish, but I do a lot of interviews and comparisons between business and sport, and you've touched on this a couple of times where he is so committed and dedicated to what he does. 8 hours later or less than 8 hours later after winning a major fight, he's back in the gym. But that says a lot about what we do, and the lessons are so applicable. And one of the things that I speak about with other business leaders is comparing working with athletes and professional athletes. It doesn't really have to be professional. We're fortunate enough that we have some world championship athletes that we work with. But at any level, the difference dealing with athletes versus dealing with businesses, we as managers understand that what they're doing is still business. It doesn't matter if it's a trucking company, you still have to do the work before you make the sale. And that's the same for a fighter. The difference between business people and athletes and fighters is athletes and fighters are always open to listening for something that might help them get better.
Yeah, because if they don't, it hurts.
Business people, right. And business people are always the first to negate or argue or give some reason or excuse as to why that won't work for them. So they're always busy closing doors because they don't have the time or the interest or the focus to take counseling or coaching. Whereas athletes are always open to coaching. What they do with that coaching is completely up to them. It's the same with athletes as it is with business people. What they do with it is up to them. But athletes will at least listen, hear you, and try it before they fire it out the other ear.
It's very rare, very, very rare for those two sets of people to actually understand each other. We had a sponsor that came into the ring with me recently for his photo, and we're all standing there doing big man hugs and everything at the announcement of the winner. And about half an hour later, I saw him outside in the smoking area. And I went up to him and I shook his hand. I said, "Thanks for your time and effort and your money for helping things like this happen." I said, "Without you sponsors, these shows wouldn't be the quality that they are." And he's like, "What the are you talking about?" who are you? I said, what do you mean, who am I? I said, half an hour ago, you were standing in the middle of the ring with your arm around me, congratulating my fighter on his win. And he's like, what? And it's like, he didn't have a clue. All they know, and for any businessman that really does understand this, or businesswoman or company that throws their money at somebody for sponsorship, please don't think I'm being disrespectful, but to me, that said one thing. That guy was all about, he was willing to put his pennies over just so that he could say he was there. Just so you cannot walk into a stadium and say, can I give you £500 and go and stand in the ring and have my photo taken with the winner? You can't just do that off the cuff. That's what sponsorship's all about. And fighters understand that sponsors need value for money. They're willing to do their bit to wear the sponsorship logos, to go out and do a bit of promoting, to mention them. Like Anthony recently did a video. You recently filmed him actually thanking Ring Royalty for sponsoring him and letting other sponsorship work. This guy didn't have a clue. He didn't have a clue what he was paying his money for. He was just giving it over. And when somebody came up and thanked him for it, well,
he didn't know what to do.
I was embarrassed. How do you feel when people are normally rushing up to shake my hand and phone me, and I've been trying to get hold of you, and I open my thing every morning, the computer, I've got Facebook messages and Twitter feeds going all over, ping, 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 ping. You know, I have to turn the electric off before I can't go to bed. And somebody comes up to me and says, sorry, I don't know who you are. I thought, geez, this has been a waste of 20 years, you know. But he was a sponsor, and the whole point was that somebody from completely outside it, one of the fighters who had no connection with the gyms or the promotion, went up and thanked the sponsor for what he'd been doing. And he just didn't click. He didn't realise what I was thanking him for. So I might go and find him again and see if he's willing to throw any more money this way. But sponsors,
and you know,
you get your money's worth.
You touched on another point there on what a large part of our job is not just looking after that fighter at ring time, but looking after him for the other 364 days of the year, or 362 days of the year, however many times he's fighting in a year. But we work for these guys every single day, not just at fight time.
And we're not just meal tickets. Some people think people like us are just meal tickets, but it doesn't work that way.
And, you know, like you said, with that video you saw from Anthony sharing his sponsor, these are the things that we do. We don't do these for our athletes. I mean, ultimately, the end game is to get assistance and help and support for our athletes, but we do this for the sponsor to give back to them.
And to give them
because
value.
You have to always be giving. You have to be giving value. It's not just about what that guy does in the ring time, at ring time. And that's where
it sounds like you're nicking Sandy Pembroke's hashtags there, brother.
Well, you know, good stuff is good stuff. It doesn't matter where it comes from, you know. And Sandy is such an anomaly in himself. Here's a guy with a PhD in marketing and works with not just companies, and not Fortune 500 companies, but Fortune 50 companies, the top 50 companies on the planet, teaching and showing them and providing them profits and marketing and all of those things. And then he goes and gets in a ring to get his face beat off. Right?
No.
Right?
I mean, I called him the professor, but I can think of another word for
it. But I mean, these are things again that show how different our perspective is from some of our counterparts out there, and it really fills me with pride doing things differently, and being able to achieve these things not just in my backyard or your backyard, but together, united across half the country, and we're getting support from all four corners of the globe now at this point with the people that we work with.
An hour down the road, there's a little subway, which is what you guys would call it. We call it the Channel Tunnel. That takes you 20 minutes. That kind of just breaks up, because once you're there, you've got the whole of Europe at your disposal. And believe you me, there's there's a lot of people, particularly in France and Spain, that we're missing. And I'm trying to get close to those guys at the moment. And it's going to be pretty phenomenal when we break that through those barriers. It's 22 miles of ocean. We've done it across 6,000 miles.
Right.
So what's another 22?
Right.
You know, like you said, it's a gateway to Europe.
It's a small world, and I mean, over the past 10 years with the internet and things that are going on like that, the globe has shrunk drastically again.
It has, but at the same time, that's what you mentioned right at the beginning. It shrunk due to the internet. What will never shrink is the costs of physically traveling that distance, traveling those miles, and again, that you mentioned is the cultural difference. I mean, I know you guys are pretty laid back. We think that you're a bit wet sometimes. That's absolutely no disrespect. I mean, in a nice way, you know. It's always everybody's brother, and thank you, sir, and thank you, mum. And they're even worse for it down in America. And most people think that over there, think that we are sort of pretty awesome and cute and everything. But when they get here, they find out we're the rudest bastards on the planet.
Well, I can say personal experience that you guys have invented the term and are the poster children for road rage. Like, I mean, it does. I didn't say specifically you. I said you guys over there.
I was fine till you curved my convertible.
You guys have been playing bumper cars on that little island for far too many generations. It's all you guys know how to do anymore. I swear.
When you drive my convertible, you joined in.
I did.
You only did it twice. The whole thing about cultural difference and that, when you get in the ring, it completely disappears. It's all about the craft.
It's man against man.
Yeah, of course it is. What I have noticed, though, is that when we look to Thailand and the Muay Thai fights that we've recently seen out there, and indeed one of our own champions has actually been out there competing himself, is that these guys aren't necessarily that big, but they are lethal.
Absolutely.
And that's a huge example of cultural difference, because you can drag your country folk out of the trees over in the States that are sort of 7 foot high and 6 feet wide and covered in hair. You can grab your average football guy out of a bar that thinks he can go out and sort himself out at a weekend, and you put them in there with my guy, you destroy them both at once together in the same minute.
Yeah.
And that's Anthony has got so much respect for me, but I'm beginning to think, I just think the guy's insane. You know, he just loves to punch people.
You know, when I look at that guy and I see him on a regular basis, we live in the same city. Very lucky for me. It's a pleasure being able to work with somebody that's you can physically be with and go and hang out with at the gym and see the little things more so. I know dealing intercontinentally, we couldn't do what we do 10 years ago without having the technology that we have now. It's opened so many doors for us to be able to do this and communicate information and make things happen. Thanks to technology that 10 years ago just wasn't there to make this happen.
Well, look at the way you met.
Look
at the way you met. It
took
somebody 6,000 miles ago to put two guys in touch that live 3 blocks from each other.
Exactly, right.
I do hear that
how that again.
Biggest thing in it for you is that Kathleen's apparently a really good cook. Yeah.
Actually, the last time we were over there, Anthony did the cooking, and it was pretty darn tasty. It was my first experience with traditional Thai food, actually, so it was pretty awesome.
As long as it hasn't got
interesting experience.
As long as it hasn't got smoked paprika in it.
Well, you'd be watching out for the maple syrup, I know.
Yeah, it's
But the thing with Anthony that baffles me, and another really good example of the type of athletes that these guys are, and Jake is developing along that same pattern, and you see it with these guys that are consummate professionals. For example, the other day, the gym that Anthony teaches at did a public workout down in a beautiful park down here. So I went down to do some filming and whatnot. And after all was said and done, there was a bunch of people, half a dozen at least, standing around talking. And Anthony says, I'm a Muay Thai fighter. You know, I fight a little Thai. I'm a Thai boxer.
a little.
And I just looked. Exactly. And I stood there. I'm like, seriously, dude? And I looked at these people and I says, he says he's a Thai boxer. What he's not telling you is he's the 4-time world champion. He's one of the most lethal men on the planet. And he's talking to you like you're the kid next door.
Yeah.
Right? And that's just speaks measures and volumes to his personality and what he does. He is and he is at such a level that we can't even get him a fight in North America.
Well,
there is nobody here that is dangerous enough or brave enough to get in the ring with him.
or just crazy, you know.
Yeah.
I'm-
Or that. You
I'm-
see the damage these guys do.
I'm working it on at the moment. As you know, we're trying out and we're pushing people. And we've been dropping hints and we've tried dangling carrots in front of people. And the biggest answer you get back is, oh, what's in it for me? You know, the usual story.
And that circles right back to where we started.
Yeah.
The difference between fighting now versus fighting 15 years ago. And the difference is that what's in it for me. Now it's not about the skill set. It's about what's in it for the promoter. And what they mean by that is how many views do you have? How many followers do you have? How much media do you have? How much coverage do you have? How many tickets are you going to sell?
That's why
all of that matters more. All of that matters more than the quality of that fighter.
That's why the purses are so big over there. We were talking about a fighter that was stranded at Heathrow a year ago, and when I interviewed him not long before that, I asked him why he was taking the fight that he was taking, and his answer to me was, "I want to sell 1 million pay-per-views." Now over here, that sounds, well, it's crazy. It's like the guy's he's just climbed off the boat from One Flew Out of the Cuckoo's Nest or something. But
perfect example of the cultural differences over here. This is how the fighters have to think.
It's pretty standard. Do you think that has to do with the sheer physical scale of things in comparison? I mean, we are a tiny little island in the middle of nowhere, the way you guys look at it. And at one time, we like to say that we were the most powerful empire on the planet, even though we stole and plundered everything, which is another point. But it's not going to be beneficial to somebody or a company in the size of North America or Canada to expect to do the same amount of business there, but they do here. Unless, which you've mentioned before, we use this little island as a gateway to Europe. And for our customers, that's something you can't buy. You've either got it or you haven't.
Right. I think it's a matter of the sport. There's only so many ways that it can evolve for guys to throw fists at each other.
Yeah.
What has evolved and changed is the business side of it. And the business has passed the sport. The business is larger than the sport.
It's the same as everything. I can't stand.
Right.
I can't stand football or soccer or whatever you want to call it. But as I recently saw on a social media post, who wants to watch a bunch of millionaires kicking a bag of wind around for 90 minutes? I mean, what is the bloody point?
We get the same thinking over here about hockey, right?
I think possibly, but if you take into, I mean, the way I look at it is, it takes a certain amount of skill to stand up on ice, let alone move and stop and turn around in circles, let alone carry a stick and hit a lump of fiberglass or whatever it is about the ice. You know, it's kind of skill. That is a sport. Anyone can run, anyone can kick a ball. And I know there's some do it better ways than others, but I think the point I'm trying to make is they're not putting themselves at risk. Yeah, there's been some pretty nasty injuries on the football pitch, but they're not putting themselves at risk like fighters do. Even your ice hockey guys. I mean, I can't imagine some of the injuries that have come out of ice hockey.
Fatalities.
Well,
there's fatalities every year in the sport.
There you go. And it's that big difference. We do have some ice hockey over here. I never got the chance to take you to see when you were here, but you would have probably found it quite laughable. That distance and that size, the size of everything, I think really is important. The number of potential viewers that you can tap into with the pay-per-view in America alone is phenomenal. And obviously the Canadians and the Americans, it's all the same land mass. I know you're different countries, and I know you've got to hang up about the differences. I'm not going to insult you by going into that. But it's the physical border, the physical barrier, your one landmass. People can get there easily. We have to get on a plane or a boat to go anywhere in this country. If we're going to, but you guys can actually walk it if you've got a few weeks to spare and a good pair of shoes. We haven't got that luxury, and those borders can be limits. So we've got to start looking at France and Spain and Italy and Germany, and even going as far across as Turkey and even Russia. They've all got athletes. Everybody's got athletes. They just
you kind of ticked it on the head there a little bit. Is how we have to do things, and this is exactly the strategy that we work with our athletes on. Is we understand that businesses outgrown the sport, and 10 years ago guys could look after themselves, but they can't anymore. There's just not enough time in the day for them to do the things outside of the ring that they need to do that are going to help them get to that position. If they don't have media coverage, if they don't have a fan base, it doesn't matter how good they are, they're going to get passed by for somebody that does have those things. Whether they're a slightly better or worse fighter. These are the things that are within our skill sets to give generously to our clients and our athletes, is to be able to provide that for them, to help them.
It's business knowledge.
Exactly.
And understand protecting them outside of the ring. Inside of the ring, no one can protect them better than themselves, but when they're outside,
right,
sooner or later, if they're doing things right, they're going to become a very marketable and profitable product.
I mean, one of the best examples, Mayweather has said it time and time again. I'm not who I am because I was the most talented boxer. I am where I am because I had the best team, and that meant business people around.
Yeah, I mean, we've actually, for somebody who's as relatively new to it as our team, with Jake at the moment, we've been complimented quite a few times on our teamwork.
Right.
And it really does make a lot of difference to have a group of people pulling together in every single direction, because it's like a funnel, and all the good stuff's being focused straight down it and coming out in one bit at the other end. And that's exactly what we can do. As soon as people start realizing that they don't know everything, just because you can log onto the internet and put a little video together or take a couple of photos that, I know what I'm doing. Yeah, I'll be all right. You don't know nothing. One of my pet things is take example, all these memes. I mean, fighters do it, businessmen do it, ordinary people. Excuse me, I'm getting stressed now. If you're
excited,
if you're going to make a valid point, make sure you bloody spell it properly. There is nothing worse than trying to make an important statement or appear intelligent and you can't even spell your own bloody name.
Putting on $1 million show with grade 2 grammar.
Yeah, basically. And it happens. Even we do it. How many times have have we posted an interview or made a video or done an advert for somebody, and we always bang it backwards and forwards for, so that all of our work, all of our talents get pulled into it at the same time. And one of us will spot the spelling mistake. Now, 9 times out of 10, oh, don't tell me how to do things. But with us, it'd be, whoa, thanks for letting me know. Thanks for reminding me. And we do it there and then. People get offended.
And it's still, some things still happen and get past us. I only this morning, when I was going to do my pre-airing share out of the links and whatnot, realized that I had the wrong time on the banner poster.
Yeah, well,
right. So I mean, even for everything that we do, there's still things that get by us, in subtle things. But the difference for all of that effort and work that we put in still gets by us.
Yeah,
Can you imagine the difference it makes if people don't have what we do at all?
In your case, it's just a lack of coffee.
or as things have been going here, too many clients all coming up at the same day. And when people's momentums come, you got to run with it, right?
Yeah, but you still find time. When I used to have, I had quite a big gardening business over here back in the late 80s and early 90s, and one of the slogans that I used and quite a few people use, and you probably heard it over there as well, was big enough to cope but small enough to care.
Yeah. And we focus on exactly that. We continuously work on growing, but never beyond our ability to care.
But we're learning all the time, and we put in the time and we put in the hours to learn and to study and do things. I mean, I know for a fact that you're in front of your computer a minimum of 12 hours a day, and that thing is on fire every minute you're in front of it. People don't see that. They don't realise how much you have to learn. And I'm never going to catch up with you the way you do it, the same as you won't go.
After 17 years, so it's just not possible. But those tools, those pieces complement each other.
Yeah.
I love analogies, and I'm a big car guy going back a lot of years. My whole life, as a matter of fact, I've been involved with racing, most of it. And the easiest way for me to explain it to people is like having a fancy hot rod, but one of the gears in the transmission isn't quite hooking the other one. It's not sinking. You still might be moving ahead, but you're making funny noises, and you're not going anywhere near the performance you need to be. And I might need a gear that I can't do that you can. You might need a gear that you can't build that I can. And this is the things that allow us and our knowledge to work so well together. You've got the music industry background that has taught you so many things about people and hands-on and business and personalities and those kinds of things. Now, when you combine that 20 years with my 17 years of doing this 12 hours a day behind a computer, that's an amassment of knowledge and experience that we bring to the table that's unique, that our clients and athletes get the unique benefit of taking advantage of in their corners and their teams, which is why we get such good results for our guys in such short periods of time, because we have the heart and the caring to make that difference. We put it together with our skill sets.
Some of the mistakes that we've made between us have taught lessons that nobody would like to learn. And I think lessons.
Right. And that's part of protecting our people is by avoiding them having to learn those lessons.
Yeah.
That's our value.
There aren't many mistakes that I make twice. Mind you.
Well, then it's a choice.
I've sold a few cars with missing gears, though, but we won't go into that.
Well, we're getting right down to the end of our time here for this session. Andy, is there any last minute message or point that you'd like to share that's your little gold nugget?
I think that honesty and integrity is everything, and I like to pride myself on the fact that if I screw up, I'm honest enough with myself to admit where I've screwed up. If I'm right, if I say I'm right, trust me, I'm right. And I'll tell you why I can say that. It's because if I'm not right, I've got the balls to say that I'm not right. I'm not a proud person. I'm not worried about pride. I'm worried about getting things right. I like people to think good of me. So before you start bullshitting people, you need to start bullshitting yourself, and that takes balls. And that is a big lesson.
Takes courage.
That's
Absolutely.
a big lesson. If you can turn around to yourself and say, "Well, it's my own fault. I did that the wrong way. I'm not going to do it again. I'll apologise to everybody that it affected, and I'll take responsibility." People will come back to you.
I totally 100% get, understand, and feel, and know exactly what you're saying, and that ties into one of the lines that one of the things that I tell a lot of people, and that's what I'm going to close the show off with. First of all, I'm going to say thank you for your time, Andy. It was great. I know there was a lot of great tips here, and I look forward to doing this more often.
That's fine.
The one thing that we all know is champions get up even when they can't.
Absolutely.
Thanks.
And